said Derek's here.
Yeah, he wanted to come along.
Is Derek here? How do we do that? How do we make sure he's not?
You check the participants.
Maybe Derek is here, but he's not meant to be participating. Oh. Well, I can report him. Okay, so that's sorted. Okay, we're good to go. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this webinar this evening. I am Rebecca Russell-Turner. We are live. I am in Mount Lavinia in Colombo, and I work on the Fashion Business Management MA course as a consultant. And tonight we have our special guests, Robert Meader and Sharon Joseph. So hello.
Hi.
Hi, Rebecca.
And
Hi,
Robert,
Rebecca.
where are you at the moment?
I'm in a virtual space.
In a virtual space.
I'm in Sri Lanka in heart and soul, but
Yeah.
currently floating around. So thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Super excited to be here.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming this evening. And Sharon, I haven't met you in real life, but we're just talking about how we'll meet in real life when we come out of lockdown. I'm going to share my screen because I just want to talk about how this webinar came about. And you can see the screen. So this was about a month ago in the Times, and I read this article with absolute intrigue about this collaboration, and this is why I approached Sharon and Robert, because I think it's a very fascinating, inspiring concepts, really original. So we're going to come off sharing and start with Robert.
Mm-hmm.
So, Robert, can you tell us about your background? Because you've actually got a background in fashion.
Correct. So my original background is actually in finance, in business. I then moved on to design, I did a BA in fashion design and an MA in a sort of more strategic fashion perspective. I mean, my interests were really very much always around storytelling and the narrative of brands and the narrative of the designer, and how do you transcend that into whatever medium you work with. I guess so my access point into creativity was fashion, but I wouldn't consider myself a fashion designer per se, as opposed to kind of a creative that works across various mediums and has as much excitement for the creative process as I do for the business and the marketing process of it. And to answer your question, how did this collaboration come about? We were approached by Tilan Vijayasinghe, who's the former head of BOI, who just relocated to a new office space in World Trade Center. And Tilan really wanted to do something different in the space, and he asked if I could really work with the various crafts that I had already been researching and working with. So I've been identifying a number of communities, both in Bentota, in Vaunia, and in Kurnagala, along with key artisans and also masters who work with these sorts of crafts and work with it at different levels. So it was real interest and passion of mine, and it kind of kind of fell all into place when Tilan was really eager to bring this to his office space and really try and create a new precedence. And then it was really more a matter of working with a team of people. And I wouldn't say that one was better than the other. I think that's the beauty of this sort of project, was that it was truly collaborative. So I was as much as part of the process as Sharon was, as the weavers was, as our production team was, as our Ramesh, who I can see is also here as well, who was overseeing all the carpentry and all the installation work. I mean, we took on it as a team, and we really worked with the concept of the client's brief. So
there's no hierarchy in your team.
I mean, apart from keeping the client happy, which I think is universal, regardless if you're in fashion or in interiors. At the end of the day, it's the client, and you know, they have budget and time in mind, and both of which you got to keep in time and keep on budget. Quite often, it never works out that way, but you know, you're governed by that. And of course, in this case, where you know, we had an exceptional client, Tilan, who was really very, very open to, you know, exploring what craft could be in a corporate setting, which quite often in Sri Lanka, I have never seen before. I think, Sharon, you can talk further, but you know, your typical go-to for any kind of corporate office space is always very bling and very kind of, you know, modern, ultra modern.
Ultra modern. And so, Sharon, can you tell me about your background? Because you've got an interior design background.
Yeah, so I studied interior design at the Academy of Design, Colombo, and I completed the Bachelor of Arts degree there. I've been in the industry for a little more than 7 years now, and I've worked for a few reputed companies in Colombo. And I'm currently self-employed, and I specialize in design and production of commercial interiors. And now I'm also moving into residential and retail design.
Thank you very much. So, Robert, how do you think that this webinar relates to fashion marketing students studying an MA?
Well, I mean, for fashion marketing students in particular, I think the key lesson there is, I mean, my background essentially is a fashion marketing background, that regardless of your medium, it's about understanding the brand and transcending the brand into either space, object, form. And in this particular case, I mean, it was a space where it had touch points. One could equate that to, let's say, retail space. So if a fashion student were to design or overlook the installation of a new store or a new fit out or a new visual merchandising campaign, it's exactly the same. You got to work with production people, you got to work with installation, you got to work with carpentry, you got to manage the process and be a part of that process. So that this space is used for, you know, financial deals versus you know, a boutique space with shoes or clothing is the difference. But at the end of the day, a space that captures the brand and an essence is what any fashion marketing student would be exposed to.
Yeah, and also strategic problem solving as well.
Yeah, of course. And that's the management side of things, right? So managing the brand, managing the budgets, managing, you know, client expectations, managing hiccups, problems, you know, the array of all of that.
Yeah, and having the overall vision.
Correct.
So can I ask you how you both met?
How we both met? Actually, we met through a common friend or a common contact who connected us, and I wanted to make sure that I worked with as many passionate people, and I think it's so important when you do these sorts of projects that you have such a good chemistry between everybody. You have a good sense of communication, and you're open to, and you're able to communicate. I think it's fundamental. So Sharon and we met over coffee, and we got along really well, and we both shared a very similar vision. And then we, you know, met with the other parts of the team, and we brought in the people as need be. And yeah, that's how I guess we orchestrated the relationship.
Yeah, we can look at some more of your work here. So we've got the narrative and the visuals together. Here we go. So we're looking at here, it's the power of craft.
Yeah. So these were, I'll briefly speak as you show. So this was sampling that we did with the weavers from down south in Bentota. And the pillow that you see there is actually a special weave created with the weavers from Valnia. Both are all very different. Both are different materials. So one is like a pong, and the other one is a seagrass, a wild seagrass. So both captures the different expressions. And we used them. One was used on the lampshade. The other one was used on the pillowcase. You know, and some of these techniques hadn't been done before by these communities. So it was also a bit of a learning process for them as much as it was for us in sampling the material and really finding the right expression.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was going to ask you next. Like, did you think you obviously saw there was a gap in the market to do this?
Correct, and I think there is a gap in the market. And I think by default, I guess, with the current situation that we're in Sri Lanka in terms of imports, we need to be a lot more resourceful, and we need to really look for solutions locally. And this is kind of the perfect opportunity. I mean, I think it was Bava who once said, to really explore the local natural materials as part of the process and as part of the materiality of projects, right? So this kind of inspired us to really look what was available. What you're seeing right now, that's a artwork that we commissioned with the community outside of Kandy. It's one particular village that only do these sesats. It's called, actually, it's like it's like an umbrella or sunshade. And they had never done it in clear. So this was also quite a bit tricky. This was difficult for them. You normally see these around in offices or in temples or in government offices, and they appear on a stick, and they appear quite bright with a lot of color and pink and oranges. And when I met this community, we spent a lot of time, or I spent a lot of time speaking to them, and they even charged more for doing it in not having color than with color, because they just needed extra time to do it. So yeah, and then this is a picture of the artwork there. We work with another known photographer of Sri Lanka called Kesera. So he helped curate the visual artwork hung on the wall, and there's a story there as well. So there's elements of Sri Lanka, and the client's portfolio of investments kind of resonates with the imagery. So there's a lot of thought and subtlety to everything that goes into that.
Certainly looks like a beautiful space to work and meet people, and very relaxing, minimal, but the heritage and the textures and beautiful colors.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. How can you not like your own work? But I think maybe, Sharon, you can bring some context to this sort of project. I mean, you're doing a lot more projects with clients, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was novel to me personally. I hadn't seen anything like that before, because the usual ones we see are very colorful, multicolored, but to see this white concept of purity was brilliant. I love the new take on how Robert recreated it altogether.
Yeah, and Sharon, so do you think there's a market for this, and is it international, or is it for local customers, or is it for people who live abroad or visit Sri Lanka?
Well, I think when it comes to modern interior, most of what Sri Lankans have in mind is a little bit of a bling, glamour, a touch of brass, bronze here and there, often influenced by the Middle Eastern countries. But I think the majority of Sri Lankans are now slowly embracing our local culture and heritage, and have begun to view it as luxury items. And I feel like there is appreciation of looking at it and how it's been created and how it's made and how it has come alive, as opposed to the end product itself. And so they do have the desire to incorporate local materials into their design. So to answer your question, I think there is potential for the international market as well as the local customers here in Sri Lanka, particularly for hotels, in the hotel industry here.
Yeah, absolutely. So lots of different markets and opportunities there. Robert, how are these crafts ethical and sustainable?
So how these crafts ethical and sustainable. I guess let's tackle the ethics aspect. I think the fact that we paid, I think it's very important to pay fairly and not to pay, you know, not to capitalize on the weavers. So where possible, you know, there was no margin put on their work. The money paid to them went directly to them, and to those that, you know, managed the process as well. So that was fair. I think that's also very important, because then it gives the weavers and these communities pride in the work they do. And I think this is the problem that we have in Sri Lanka right now, that the average person doesn't appreciate this craft and the artisanal craft, because they look down upon it. You know, they think it's a cheap craft, when in actual fact it's not. It's a lot of love, a lot of heart, a lot of passion goes into this craft. And that's the problem. If you were to really value and price the craft at the price it should be, it would be a lot higher. So I think that's a kind of, you know, the ethical aspect around it, but also to still encourage Sri Lankans to take pride in this, because it's right at their doorstep. I mean, they're so lucky to be able to, you know, go to these communities. You would not be able to do that in the US or in Europe. Craft is dead. There is no local craft anymore. Everything's been, you know, standardized, outsourced, or manufactured. So that's a unique selling point that we undervalue in Sri Lanka, that we should really take pride in and really support and really nurture and really be patient with. It's not going to be something delivered overnight, or it's not going to be something that's always going to come in 100% perfect. I think as creatives or those in the industry working with craft, you have to allow yourself the give and the take of the process, you know, to really work with the community, to go to their centers or to their villages or whatever, and sit on the ground literally with them and actually work with them and show them ideas and discuss, right? And then, you know, it's such a learning process for all parties involved. I learn as much as they do. And the sustainability aspect is, you know, when you look at people, planet, profit, on the planet side, it's using as much locally sourced material, you know, considering the, you know, the carbon emission or the environmental aspect of importing. In this case, the weaving and all the weaving elements are locally sourced, locally manufactured, locally supplied. So that also, you know, ticks all those boxes. I won't say that the project is 100% sustainable and environmental. It's very hard for any project to be. I think
nothing is 100% sustainable.
Exactly. But I think the fact that it's a start, and I think the fact that it opens the discussion for other, you know, key business leaders or other people who are considering interiors or spaces to look at options and to see, well, you know, rather than doing 100%, you know, imported wood, maybe I'm going to mix it up a bit and mix up different materials and different woods, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Sharon, would you like to elaborate on a bit more about the manufacturing and the supply chains involved, and which areas you're working with or worked with in Tranquil?
Yeah. So currently I have a great supplier base I work with, and some of their factories are located in Colombo and the outskirts of Colombo. They're very reliable and a great team of craftsmanship. And we go to the extent of monitoring minute details and make sure the quality is met before it reaches the customer. So that requires a few factory visits and quality checkups, but they're very standard oriented and, you know, very what I'm trying to say is we want the best for the customer. So we look at all the minute details before it reaches the customer.
Yeah.
And if I could add on that, I think in terms of the natural material, a lot of it is, it's not coming from a formal agri sector. So the government and farmers don't grow reed. You know, the reed is gathered from surrounding areas, or they don't particularly grow the pung for this. And I think if there was any, you know, interest to develop it, I think that's also another opportunity that's needed, you know, to help this industry and to help set parameters and the infrastructure. And then, of course, to export it, because that's where the beauty is, because that's something locally grown, locally sourced, locally produced, that it could really be exported. Bear in mind, there has to be a level of quality control, fumigation, to make it a new option also to export.
Yeah. So what are the challenges of exporting Sri Lankan goods to other countries? Obviously, it depends on which country.
Sharon?
Yeah.
I would, right now, I'd say
Yeah.
exporting anywhere is a nightmare.
Yeah. And I
Before
think
the pandemic.
Yeah, of course. But here I would say the most challenging is meeting the expectations of high quality finish and standards required. Because if you're talking about luxury and craft, we need to be fully hands on and engage with everyone in the execution and implementation from beginning to end, as we did with the TW Corp project. So the opportunity is always there, but the challenge would be to up the quality and standards of the finished product.
Yeah, that was my next question. Like, what are the challenges of working with Sri Lankan craftsmen and artisans?
I meant, working and making in Sri Lanka is always a challenge anyway, regardless if it's local or not. I think sticking to budgets and timelines and that's always going to be a challenge. The whole, yes, tomorrow, and tomorrow never comes type mentality. So you got to be really, really patient with that. And then I think specifically on the artisanal craft is just being, extra patient and really being a lot more collaborative, I think, in that process. So, you can't just make a call and order 2 by 2 meters of a certain weave. You got to really work with the right people and the right support in between to get it done. And we're fortunate enough that we have some great people around us. Mihiri, who's guided us extensively, and she was fundamental to this project as well. She's also very patient and she's also very hands-on, and she understands us. So communication is also very key in that process. Sharon?
Yeah, I think we need to communicate the exact design in mind through either technical drawings in terms of dimensions, colors, with comprehensive details. And I think it's, as Robert mentioned, it's absolutely necessary to set deadlines in advance. Sometimes sticking to deadlines becomes quite a challenge. And also you need to respect the artisan, because most of them kind of come from less wealthy backgrounds, and you need to respect them, talk to them in a way without belittling them or making them feel intimidated. And I think, they end up coming up with something spectacular at the end.
So if I was a fashion student now, watching this, I'd be thinking about the opportunities available to me to start working with craftspeople. What about export? Obviously, that changes from country to country and shipping. Have you had any experience with exporting out of the country with your goods?
Not directly on this project, but in general, when you're going to work with any kind of craft, and if you're going to scale it, I think that's the challenge there. And if it's going to go through customs, and if it's made with natural material, you've got to, check with the certain compliance with fumigation, because natural material, especially coming out of Sri Lanka or the tropics, they can carry fungus and carry insects. So it's important to make sure that they meet all the standard requirements. And actually, there are fumigation centers, but there's nothing standard that people can just go into. So that would be a challenge. And then I think it's really to find the right market on the other side, and deliver a high quality product and not to undervalue, because if you can sell directly to end consumers a high quality, high finished product, you can make most of the profit. There's no reason why, all our craft industry, all our small cottage craft industry could not sell direct. I mean, they can absolutely sell directly to Europeans or to Australians or to Americans. We just got to, the products got to develop, the platforms have got to develop, the marketing channels and platforms also got to support that. But there is huge potential for sure.
And I'm talking about marketing. What kind of strategy do you choose to market your collaborations?
Well, I think for us, it was definitely, to show, we're so happy that the article went to press, and I'm fingers crossed there might be a few more coming out. We've been asked to nominate, to put the project into competitions. If we win, that will also support not only us, but will also give light to Sri Lanka and hopefully stimulate others and more people to jump on the bandwagon. And I think it's just to keep at it. And we've got a great group of people that we work with, from our production people through to our carpentry. They all know us, and we have, we're all helping each other out, and slowly, and it's word by mouth, I think, is the best example. Yeah.
Sorry about that call I just got. I just had a few keen customers that couldn't get into the room, so I've just sent them to Facebook Live. So that's what that phone call's about. So sorry about that. So who and where do you think is the target audience for this kind of level of craft? Is it Europe or America or Australia or all three?
Sharon, I'll let Sharon.
I feel like Robert could answer that question.
On a global level, to be very honest, I mean, we see in Europe, we are, as a trend, Europeans are getting a lot closer to nature. So it doesn't take much to see that there is a huge interest for natural concepts or design that are circular, that are recyclable, that are renewable, that are biodegradable. So anything that has a strong affinity to nature, I think there's a huge demand for in Europe. Countries like Germany, Northern Europe in particular, UK, the Netherlands. America's a bit different. There is demand there, but not as much, I would say, as Europe, who prefer that, that not rough edge, but the rough edge, if I could say. Locally in Sri Lanka, Sharon, maybe you can answer that one. Who would, I guess, like this sort of project?
I feel like we can, I mean, people who are in the hospitality industry or the interior designers who are designing hotels at the moment would be really interested in something like this, because when you visit hotels down south, you tend to see the same kind of design replicated everywhere. So I feel like they would definitely love to introduce this kind of craft and heritage into their designs. And I feel like there's a huge market potentially in terms of hotel designs in the future.
So questions.
But I mean, with that as well, I think that's in part, that's the education that comes into it, right? It's trying to educate the consumer at all levels. So the top executives of Colombo 7 or within the Colombo city, get them excited, inspire them, but also share with them and show them what can be done, I think is key. Because I think once they see an office like that, it's about stimulating the demand, right? So once they get excited, you have more people asking. And I think as long as weavers aren't exploited and artisanal, let's say the artisanal craft sector is respected and not exploited, we're good. But once you start, driving them on price and or alternatively importing, weave from Thailand or from Indonesia, it goes against what this is all about, right?
For sure.
Sharon, with all this choice of craft to choose from in Sri Lanka, how do you select the design development? Obviously, you've got your interior design background, and you have to go to the client and back and forth. So how would you initially start that process?
Well, I first sit with the client and talk to his or her requirements, because they obviously have a lot in their mind when they come to us. So I sit with them, learn of their preferences, talk about what they want, and learn a little about their personalities so I can create something nice. What I usually do is I create mood boards. So they get an idea, to convey an idea of what they really want, and finalize the designs in terms of material choices, colors, inspirations, and whatever design they have in mind, and then move on to the design stage.
And how would you describe this kind of new design aesthetic for Sri Lanka?
I think, as I said before, people are now trying to view this as a luxury item, because they're very much interested in how it is made, how it is done, and how they could use local products into their house designs, their office designs. I feel like they're finally appreciating the Sri Lankan culture. So I feel like in the future, they will definitely consider using local materials and helping out the people in need in the South, and also to bring about Sri Lankan heritage and culture alive. That's what I see that will appear in the future.
So
Can I add on that? I mean, I think, Sri Lanka's had a long history of being respected and considered for its interior and architect in general. I mean, we had De Silva, we had Bava, who were pioneers in their own rights, being the first female, being the first interior architect to define tropical living and design and exterior interior space. I mean, is there anything astronomically groundbreaking in what we've done? Not particular. I mean, the things that we've done is the things you can find. I think it's more how we've brought it together is quite different for Sri Lanka. The curation and the collaborative spirit and how we did it as well is different. In normal circumstances, you just have a straight line of one telling the next of what to do. In this case, it was really, me or Sharon getting told off by the weavers because something wasn't right, through to me being, telling the next one off, through to the other one telling me. So it's really this collaborative spirit of getting the job done, which is also quite different. Tricky, but different.
Yes, there's always challenges, but obviously we're having the pandemic at the moment. So what kind of challenges are you facing because of the pandemic? There's obviously all the typical ones, but is there anything unusual, anything to add?
Well, that a lot of the, we relied on a lot of people in different areas of the country that were locked down, everything from, Palmyra from the north through to, weaving in the south, through to, cotton or handloom from Kurnagala area, so getting samples or visiting was very difficult. And not only that, getting on site was also very difficult. So getting people to come in and do the install. But once again, we were so lucky to have such a great client like Tilan, who was very flexible, and he was okay with it. So not like other clients who would have killed us by not delivering on time. But I think we're all going through the same thing. We all got to be a little bit extra flexible in the process of things. Yeah.
A lot of time to reflect and actually be quite creative at the moment as well, I think. So my final question is, what kind of career advice would you offer a young Sri Lankan person who wants to be an entrepreneur, who is studying fashion management, who wants to do a startup? Have you got any valuable advice that you can give them?
Sharon, you want to go first?
Well, I would say run with your passion. I mean, nothing like loving what you do. And if you love interior design, if you're inspired in architecture, if you love creating clothes, if you're inspired in fashion and style and what is trending at the moment, I'd say run with your passion. Robert, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I think for any kind of creative out there, I think there is so much opportunity, even in the worst of circumstances, that what we're going through right now with lockdown and crisis and whatnot. I mean, I'm a firm believer there's a lot of things that can be done, a lot of things that can be developed in Sri Lanka, and it's just more inward looking than outward looking, and really to explore the different communities and different sectors and take the time and be patient and experiment and be creative and have fun with it and talk to people and share. I really hate this idea of we're moving away from the egocentric designer of just one prima donna designer who leads everything. No, design really is a social construct, so that we should really be working together and sharing ideas, and it's always going to be frustrating because someone always wants to take credit, and so be it. Let them take credit. You're going to move on to the next project anyway. So don't be upset and don't fight for those things. Fight for what's right, which is taking care of the planet, preserving craft, empowering others, knowing that what you do is going to have a long-term social impact and betterment to the community and to the planet. Profit's always going to be there, but to really operate and work with those values in your mind and in your heart and in your creative process.
Thank you so much. So that comes to the end of my questions. Do the audience have any questions they would like to ask? Anyone out there? I think mainly the audience is free on Facebook. Okay, well, I've really enjoyed your company and insights tonight. Thank you so much. And I really want people to walk away from this talk thinking about how relatable this is to fashion and craft.
Absolutely. But if I could add as well, it's precisely, it's more than, it's fashion, but it's
also... I can't hear you right now.
Hang on. Can you hear me? Is it better?
Still can't hear you.
What about now?
Can you hear us?
Sharon, can you hear me?
Oh,
I can hear you, Robert. Yes.
Okay, no worries. So what I was saying is, I can hear you. So okay. I think it's really important.
So we're having a few technical problems. Sharon, is your microphone working, or is it maybe it's my?
It is working.
Okay, great. Anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
Yes, if you can hear me. But anyway, I'm going to say it anyway. I know Sharon can hear me. But it's important that just because you study fashion management, don't exclude yourself from working across, the full creative spectrum. So, you're going to meet clients who are going to ask you to design logos, or clients to design products, or clients to design experiences. You as a creative and you as a marketer or someone in management, it's your role to find those solutions. So it's really about, problem solving, finding the right people. If it's not you, then it's somebody else, but really holding it together and just delivering, I would say. Sharon, any last words?
Thank you for having us. I mean, it was a great opportunity. I think Robert and I really had a great opportunity working together as a team, and hope we can make Sri Lanka proud in the future.
I hope you can hear me. Can you?
We can.
Or no?
We can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so thank you so much for joining us tonight, and have a good evening. Robert, have a lovely time in your virtual space, and see you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
for
guys.
Thank you.